colleges are going to say, you want to come to this college, buddy? You're going to get vaccinated. Lady, you're going to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Big corporations like Amazon and Facebook and all of those others are going to say, you want to work for us, you get vaccinated. And it's been proven that when you make it difficult for people in their lives, they lose their ideological bullshit and they get vaccinated.
Thank you. Are all objections to COVID vaccinations ideological bullshit, Dr. Fauci?
No, they're not, and
Thank
that's
you.
not what I was referring to.
Well, in reference to making it hard for people to get education, traveling, working, I'd say it very much was in context. And I take great offense to this. Miss Allison Williams testified before this committee about losing her job because she sought an exemption for ESPN's vaccine mandate, which came from recommendations from bureaucrats like yourself. She and her husband were actively working with a fertility expert, a physician, on how to get pregnant, and agreed with the premise that she was young, healthy, wanted to get pregnant, and shouldn't get the vaccination for medical purposes. But she was fired because you made it hard, just like you said in your statement, because you didn't want to make sure that the ideological bullshit got in the way of her working, of living her life, of making a medical decision with her healthcare professional. I think America should take great offense to this. That's exactly what you meant when you said making it hard for people to live without getting a vaccination. You affected people's ability to work, travel, be educated, to actually flourish in American society, to self-determine, as we're all given God-given rights. Shame on you. Dr. Fauci, you've become Dr. Fear. Americans do not hate science. I don't hate science. The American people hate having their freedoms taken from them. You inspired and created fear through mass mandates, school closures, vaccine mandates that have destroyed the American people's trust in our public health institutions. This fear you created will continue to have ripple effects over generations to come. You have already seen its effects in education, in the economy, and everything else. Quite frankly, you said, if you disagree with me, you disagree with science. Dr. Fauci, I disagree with you because I disagree with fear. And with that, I yield.
What's going on? What's going on, y'all? I figured I'd come talk to y'all before I head on into the work site. But I wanted to come talk to y'all about this Dr. Fauci thing. Now, the title of it, I call it Fauci, Follies, and Foolishness, is because, you know, one of the things I've learned, people say a lot of things, but how does a guy like him work for 54 years for the government? How does that happen? I need to know, how did that happen? Where, you know, you got presidents that can get 2 terms, that's 8 years. Congressmen that can stay there forever, you know, in 2-year terms. But a guy like Dr. Fauci that works in the medical field for the government, you get to stay in office for 54 years through multiple administrations. That gains you multiple influence, favor, and power in the government. That allows you all kinds of power. And Fauci got so much power to where, you know, during the COVID, his word was law. You know, people getting shut down. People still wear masks to this day because of that. And I think it's real funny. That's why I wanted to take a look in at this live hearing, you know, to where you see where it's possibly seems as if Fauci misled America. And a lot of Americans believe that. But it doesn't mean anything to lie to Congress anymore. You know, it used to mean something. If you lied to Congress, mobsters used to be scared of that. Ask mobsters about lying to Congress. You know what I'm saying? That's where that whole plead the fifth thing got popular. For mobsters, it was pleading the fifth because they didn't want to be charged with lying to Congress in a lot of cases. But just the mere fact of Fauci working in the government for 54 years shows you about the bureaucracy that exists in our government, where when you say drain the swamp and the deep state, that's what they're talking about. It's getting rid of these people that's been there for so long and, enrich themselves, and they get to roam free and do whatever they want, more than our elected officials in some aspects. They have more power than elected officials. And Fauci was one of these people. But it seems like anybody that didn't do what he recommended, because it's called a thing called plausible deniability that everybody seems to forget about in these days and age. Plausible deniability. You can be the head of something and say, well, I didn't know. Look at Jim Comey. There's a lot of things he claimed he didn't know about that was going on in the FBI. And now Christopher Wray doing the same thing. I don't know. You're the head of the organization. You're supposed to be the face of that organization, but everybody don't know. But in Fauci's case, it was, a lot of people believe that COVID virus originated in the Wuhan lab. They was actually joking and laughing about that stuff. If you could look back, for those of y'all that remember, they was calling it bat flu, Wuhan flu. Everybody was tripping off of it. But when it became really major, and that's for another video of why I personally think that came about, COVID and everything else that came of it. But that's for another video. But after that, then it slowly but surely came across Europe, and then it came into the United States, and then everything under the sun was labeled COVID. Doctors that was actually coming to say, hey, this is not as bad as they claim it is, was being censored and silenced or fired all over the place. And they don't even talk about that. There's a lot of doctors that stood up for what they believed in and lost their livelihood because of it. Almost like Gestapo tactics, where they was never heard of again. Social media, they censored anybody that talked about what some of these doctors was talking about. And it was just one of those things to where the whole thing was bad. The whole thing was bad with the COVID-19 thing. And it just proves to me that the deep state and the swamp is real. It's cruel to leave old folks to die alone. There was a lot of stories of that. And I believe it was done, they've done that purposely. You know what I'm saying? To stop the spread, my ass. You know what I'm saying? I thought that there was no such thing as a consensus in science, and that you were supposed to question everything. That was the beauty of science, that we question everything and we learn, and then we move forward. But when you get all these groups that comes and says we formed a consensus on them, and a lot of it is based behind money. But I just wanted to take a look back at that time of COVID-19, and it's just something that didn't seem right to me. You know what I'm saying? It just, everything about that didn't seem right. And it was just a reminder to me that if you look back over the years, and I just say I go so far as back as look at what we've been through since 2000. It's crazy. And we're still here. Like Morpheus, we are still here. But think about this. West Nile virus, anthrax, SARS/COVID. That was one of the original forms of COVID. Mumps, E. coli, and salmonella, H1N1, the swine flu, whooping cough, MERS COVID, another form of COVID. You see the theme building up? Ebola, Zika virus, and then COVID-19. And a lot of these people have patents on cures and actually the infection and the disease. So you tell me when it comes to thinking about this stuff. I know this video ain't gonna get much views. I know they're gonna suppress that because there's a lot of big money in keeping the people locked down and not believing in something. But will the Republicans in this hearing hold them accountable? I don't know about all that. We'll see.
In a lab.
Wasn't so important that the virus we don't know. We
Well,
know
it was important to someone in the Biden administration, so much so that the top people at Meta, the top people at Facebook are asking, why are we getting all this pressure to downplay the lab leak theory? And we have an email from June of the same year, June 4th, 2021, saying the same thing. It was certainly important to somebody.
well, what has that got to do with me?
I'm asking you because you're the expert on the coronavirus. I'm saying,
Am
why
I
was
on
the
those
administration?
emails?
Why was the administration so pushing not to have the lab leak theory as something that was viable?
I can answer that. I've kept an open mind throughout the entire
You kept
process.
an open mind, Dr. Fauci, open mind.
That is correct.
What happened in those 3 days? Why did Dr. Anderson and Mr. Anderson and Dr. Gary, why did they change their mind in 180 degrees? Because what Christian Anderson says 3 days later, after he said virus looks engineered, virus not consistent with evolutionary theory, 3 days later he says the main crackpot theories going around at the moment relate to this virus being somehow engineered, and that is demonstrably false. How did they figure all that out in 3 days, Dr. Fauci?
You can do that.
Still have an open mind.
Well, what they did is that they testified before this committee. What they did, they went back and looked at the sequences and realized that their initial concern was unfounded about that, and it did not look at all like it was manufactured. But as they said in their paper, even though they feel it was more likely,
3 days. They figured
that's
it out.
exactly. You could do that
Okay.
in 3 days. You
Okay.
can scan sequences in a day. You
Okay.
don't need 3 days.
Okay, who's Robert Redfield?
The former director of the CDC.
Dr. Redfield, right? And he was also in the coronavirus task force. Is that accurate?
He was a member of the coronavirus task force.
And here's
yeah.
what he said to this committee. He said Redfield said that Fauci and Collins left him out because Redfield suspected that coronavirus had leaked from the Chinese lab. Is that accurate?
Well, he said that, but that's not true.
You're
That
saying
is incorrect, Congressman.
Dr. Redfield's lying to the committee when he sat right where you sat?
When he said that I kept him out, that is an incorrect statement. The roster who was on the phone
was Dr. Redfield in that conference call on February 1st when you had Mr. Anderson and Dr. Gary on that call?
He was not. And the conference call was put together by Jeremy Farrar. So no one kept him out. He said he was kept out because
Did
he
did U.S. tax dollars?
You want me to answer the question?
Yeah, I would just wonder why he wasn't on the call. It seems to me the head of CDC, part of the coronavirus task force, which was formed 2 days prior to that call, would have been on the call.
Well, the call was arranged by Jeremy Farrar. You should ask him.
Okay. Did U.S. tax dollars flow through a grant recipient to the lab in China?
I'm sorry. What was?
Did U.S. tax dollars flow through a grant recipient to the lab in China?
Yes, of course. It was a subaward to the Wuhan Institute.
And who approved that award?
Excuse me?
And who approved that award? What agency approved that award?
National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases.
Your agency approved that, right?
Yes, it did. After.
Does that have anything to do with this downplaying of the lab leak theory?
No,
Nothing to do with it.
nothing.
What do you agree that there was a push to downplay the lab leak theory?
Not on my part.
Really?
Really?
Wow.
Wow.
I think most of the country would find that amazing. I still got 11 seconds.
Well, look at the fact.
Now see how defiant Fauci gets to be? He gets to be defiant. The Republicans ain't doing them no help either. They always stumbling, bumbling, and mumbling when they're trying to question people, while Democrats look like a well-oiled machine when they're getting up there crying and whining about Trump. But now, for a lot of people, I think Dr. Fauci did a lot of bad things for him, man. There's a lot of people that didn't get to see their families in their final days. That's more the problem that I have with them and the lies and snake stuff, that they were so cruel that you couldn't be with your loved ones in their final minutes. And for the old people that's thinking back of their family tree and what they went through and where they've been and their kids and their grandchildren to sit there in some of these hospitals and die alone. I got that. To me, that seems like a morally cruel thing to do. And for those of y'all that don't remember, there was pressure from the higher ups at these hospitals to label every death a COVID death. A lot of people don't want to remember that, but there's a lot of things that was going on that a lot of people, said it was died and said it was COVID. Now I get it, people die, and it's sad and unfortunate, but I just think the whole thing of not being with your loved ones in their most need moment is a cruel thing to do. And a lot of people couldn't get the care that was dying of cancer that they didn't want to talk about. So the whole thing to me just seemed like another thing that they try to use to control us as people, the mandates and all that. It personally messed my daughter's schooling up. Her being on her laptops and iPads or whatever have you in a out of school setting is more of a relaxing thing. But for you to have to do that, to do schoolwork all the time, and then, it can be draining, especially for a teenager. So it hurt her dearly, that time in school because she wasn't able to interact with other kids and find her specific way of how she could learn. And I think that was the problem with that. Not all kids learn the same way. Good teachers, great teachers, they know that. Great teachers know that not every kid learns the same, and kids learn different. But when you get mandates for masks and vaccinations that may or may not work, and then they say, if you question that, you don't agree with science, you're against this, you're that. Think about how many people got named and shamed. They just questioned this and was like, hold up, man. I don't want to put nothing crazy in my body. I mean, it's just, I ain't saying that Fauci should be the main one, because there's a lot of people that went into a lot of these decisions that were made. And then you come to find out that some of these people that was out there the most promoting these lockdowns and mandates, they was doing whatever they wanted while everybody else was locked in. Going to restaurants, having parties. Oh, man. So it must have been a free-for-all for them. And let's not go into all that loan fraud that was going on for these people that was getting all this fake money. Now they are getting all this real money from the government, but off of fake fraudulent claims. A lot of people was doing some fake and fraudulent stuff during COVID to get money in the name of business. Yeah, I know this video ain't gonna get a lot of views because a lot of people don't want the truth to come out. And I think me personally, I could be dead wrong, and I would say so. But I think in the next 20 years, 10 to 20 years, we'll come to find out that this COVID-19, along with many other things that have been forced upon our society, has been some of the greatest medical hoaxes out there. I'm not saying that there's no disease and no stuff out there that can't wipe people out. But, I'm used to the movies like Outbreak, where the president got to make a decision to where he want to blow an American town to smithereens. When we get Outbreak like that, that's when it's real for me, personally. I'm used to seeing, when you talk about pandemic, that's what I'm thinking about, the Black Plague from back in the days. I'm thinking about stuff like that. I'm not thinking, COVID-19 to me, living through it as I have, I don't think it was like none of that. Or the bubonic plague. Hell, even the damn mumps and measles. That feels more real to me. And hell, I had chicken pox, so goddamn. I know, man. But I think, the big government, big pharma, and everything else that goes into it pays a key to how these people operate. And I wanted to give y'all a glimpse into what these people do. They get up in front of the American people a lot, and the Democrats and swamp creatures that will give them a pass and let them continue to lie to us. Maybe there'll come a point to where we as the American people can really hold elected officials and bureaucrats accountable, because right now we have really no way. The elected officials at the ballot box, but these bureaucrats, you really have no way of getting to them. They have security, they live behind gated communities, you know what I'm saying? So, you're not gonna get to them, and they make sure of that and a lot of expectations. J. Edgar Hoover, I believe he lasted in the government about as long as Fauci, 50 some years. And they said the word is that every incoming president come in, that J. Edgar Hoover was the last to meet with them, and he come into the meeting with a big manila envelope with God knows what in that envelope. And he always kept his job when all of the administration people before got fired or left. J. Edgar Hoover was able to keep his job and keep his position at the FBI all them years. So you think that still don't go on to this day? Like I said, don't let it lie me. I'm just talking. I'm just talking. But I know damn well for sure, man, that some things are not right in our government. And anytime anybody tries to step up against it, they try to come down on you with the full weight of the government. And I think one of them things was COVID-19. I ain't even talking about the other stuff and data that's come forward and come out now. I'm just thinking about the cruelness of older folks dying alone and not being with their family. To me, if you can't think about that and have a heart, I know some people that couldn't get to their loved ones because of the COVID thing. So, and I can only imagine what they was going through. That's why it made me pray for my loved ones not to have to go into that situation, because, I may or may not be able to be with them if they needed to be with somebody. So I think a lot of this stuff is crazy. But we're going to check out a little bit more of this Fauci hearing, and then I'm out.
Of things.
And then I won't belabor the point, but we talked about the 6 foot distance an awful lot today. Do you recall if it was ever suggested to be 10 feet?
I don't recall, Mitch, if it was ever suggested it was 10 feet, but when I made my explanation of what it was, I was saying that there was no trial that looked at 10 versus 6 versus 3 versus not even worrying about it at all.
And you said today that there were discussions at the White House about the 6 foot rule. You don't recall if it was discussions about whether or not it should be 3 or should be 10 or should be 6?
I don't recall, Mitch, what the exact discussion was, but as I've said in response to multiple questions, what we had, the CDC was said that on the basis of their evaluation, which was based on the droplet approach, that 6 foot would be to go. And since there was no clinical trial, that's why it was accepted by the group.
And then it hasn't been a large topic today, and we talked about kind of, again, the many unknowns in early 2020. Schools were closed through the semester. Some schools reopened for the fall semester. Some remained closed going through into 2021. Looking back, are there current academic ramifications of remote schooling or kids not being in school?
I think there have been a number of I know that there have been a number of studies to show that there are lasting effects, at least up to this point. And they tend to attenuate over time, but there have been substantial negative effects on learning and on children when you keep them out of school for a prolonged period of time.
Have you seen any studies suggesting physical health ramifications?
I haven't seen physical health ramifications.
Mental health.
I believe that there are some that show psychological issues that relate to keeping kids out of the environment, of the social environment at school.
And apologize for bouncing around. We don't have 14 hours with you today. I've got 30 minutes, so
I'm so sorry about that.
I'm gonna move quickly.
Yeah.
Again, across the dais, both sides of the aisle, a lot of questions on the origins of COVID and finding out the origins and how that could better lead to both protecting against spillover and wildlife trade, but also increased biosafety standards. As you sit here today, is it possible that COVID-19 was the result of a laboratory-related accident?
Oh, absolutely. And I keep, like I mentioned multiple times, I keep an open mind. I feel, based on the data that I have seen, that the more likely, not definitive, but the more likely explanation is a natural spillover from an.
For them to question, for even you questioning that can't be biological warfare, excuse me. I said warfare. That's some of that country twang coming out of me. But warfare, you can't, there's no such thing as biological warfare. People don't create things. And sometimes you have to test these things out on humans to see if they work or not. People know that our government has these kind of weapons. We know about these things. So for them to act like that can't be a possibility of something getting leaked out is asinine to me. I just look at that like, come on, man. They look like, oh, how dare you say that it didn't happen naturally. And they really like to insult people's intelligence. And I'm not the brightest bulb in the pack. I can tell you that. But I do know what I see, man. And sometimes they act like there's no possibility that can't happen, especially at what was going on at that time. If people that can remember, I know it's hell sometimes I can't remember everything, y'all, but there was a time before COVID that I remember that things were pretty good and things were looking bright for the future. And things were getting better for all Americans. And a certain letter was wrote to the United States Congress and Senate from the Chinese government telling them that they better get rid of Trump before we start naming names. They actually wrote a letter to our United States Congress members and Senate members saying that they needed to get rid of Trump because he's kicking our ass economically, which he was. With them tariffs, he was body blowing China, body blowing, and tariffs. Them tariffs to China, and when he said he was pouring millions and millions into the United States coffers, that's exactly what he was doing. Someone showed that they had to write a letter to our government to tell them, get rid of this dude. And in my opinion, the next thing you know, COVID-19. This video probably gonna be stuck on 0 views. But it's all good for me to get that out there because I felt I had to get that out there to y'all. I ain't saying that diseases and stuff and pandemics aren't real. But sometimes they're not as big as people portray them to be. That's all I'm saying. And they really silenced a lot of people that were saying that exact same thing. That, hey, this is not as big as they're making it out to be. Now, for you, if your own personal issue, you feel like you had a COVID-related death in the family and, that's what you stand on, I have no ill will towards you. You know what I'm saying? That's what you feel. But I feel a lot of deaths that was getting labeled a COVID death that were not actually COVID death. You know. And then at one time during the COVID outbreak, they mentioned the homeless. If he was talking about stop the spread, what was they really doing for all the homeless that was running around in the country, in the major cities? They never talked about that. And every day they had a little death monitor. So if you wake up every day and you look at whatever news channel have you that was out, that's how you know it was a unison on things. That's how you know they was all together and coordinated on a thing. Even the one y'all that love Fox News, they coordinated and had that death meter up every day, that blinking with the COVID virus. Every day they blinked that stuff. Every day and talked about this death meter going up. I think they had to let up because the people was going to buck. And you know what I'm saying? The powers that be had their way. COVID mandates and lockdowns will still be in effect to this day. They will still be in effect to this day. You can best believe that. I put that on everything. If they can have it their way, we still be locked down. But I believe the power of people is a real thing. And they took the temperature of that. People were ready to buck. People were ready to buck. It really was. And I think that the power of the people is a real thing that I wish we could harness in a way of doing good by our fellow men than just in times of necessity. You know what I'm saying? It seems like we all come together when it's a tragedy. And I hate that. I hate that about our society, that everybody can lay down their differences when it's some major tragedy that's bigger than all of us on the line, like Armageddon. You know what I'm saying? Or some big tragedy like 9/11. And I think it's one of those things that where for people to regain trust in government, it needs to be accountability for individuals like Dr. Fauci that's been there for 54 years and get in front of Congress and basically tell lies and have the Democrats on the panels protect them. So we're going to watch a little bit more of this. And like I said, I'm out of here.
To Dasick, but to say that I'm getting involved in trying to help him or protect him, not so.
Did you ever have any conversations with Dr. Morenz about what Dr. Dasick was facing or about the termination of the grant?
You know, he may have mentioned to me something like Dr. Dasick is going through terrible times, but I don't recall. It is conceivable that he would have mentioned that to me because, as he mentioned to you, that Dr. Dasick and he are very good friends. So it would not be surprising if sometime he had mentioned to me, boy, Dr. Dasick's going through some really tough times. Fine. That doesn't mean that I say you should help him.
No, absolutely doesn't. So that's why we want to ask the questions and
Yes.
get the answers. During your transcribed interview with us, you were asked about whether or not Dr. Dasick had a conflict of interest in reviewing the origins of COVID-19. And you testified, I hesitate to speculate about what someone else should do. The only people that I'm involved with is my own staff, who we've mentioned many times in this discussion, who don't have a conflict of interest. With the benefit of hindsight and the work of this committee, do you believe Dr. Morenz had a conflict of interest regarding EcoHealth?
Well, from what we know now, he definitely had a conflict because he was communicating with a grantee of helping him in response to an NIH issue, which is a conflict of interest. I did not know that at the time when I made your statement.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Sticking with EcoHealth, in April 2020, NIH terminated and then subsequently reinstated and then suspended the EcoHealth grant that had the Wuhan Institute as a sub-grantee. Do you recall that decision?
Yes.
Were you involved at all in that decision?
No.
You previously testified to House Energy and Commerce that you were in essence told to cancel the grant? Do you recall who told you?
We got it from a number of, now retrospectively, we found out how it was. It was the White House told the department to tell the NIH to cancel the grant.
Did you agree with the cancellation?
What is that? Do we need to listen to that? Okay.
He was escorted out.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm
Um,
sorry. Repeat the question, Mitch.
did you agree with the cancellation?
You know, it wasn't a question of agreeing or disagreeing. It was like, can we really do that? I don't think that you can do that. And as it turned out, I was right, because the general counsel of HHS said, by the way, you can't do that. You've got to restore the grant.
And that's why they restored it and then suspended it pending the
Yes.
compliance review.
Exactly.
Not to keep reading Dr. Morenz's emails, but on June 24th, 2020, Dr. Morenz wrote an email. He, referencing you, made some additional comments to the effect that this came from the White House and he was totally opposed to it. You weren't totally opposed to it?
Well, see, that's his, he's doing a lot of interpretation, Mitch. His interpretation, I was totally opposed to it. It was more of, can we really legally do that? And the answer turned out, I was right. No, you can't.
Do you recall did the department ask you first or Dr. Collins first to
I
terminate?
think
the
it went
grant?
directly to Building 10. Excuse me, Building 1, the director's
Is that the NIH director's
yeah,
office?
yeah. I think it went from the department to NIH to us.
Were you, prior to your retirement in December of 2022, were you involved in any of the compliance actions NIH took against EcoHealth?
I don't believe so. I think the actual, and again, I'm a little unclear about the time, but I think most of the disciplinary actions actually occurred after I left, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, the actual suspension and debarment occurred after you left, but there were a number of letters requesting lab notebooks or further information while you were still there.
What happened, Mitch, and it's important to point this out, once it was clear that there was compliance issues while I was still there, we were told at NIAID, stay out of it. Compliance is going to be handled by Building 1, i.e. the NIH director, and Mike Lauer. So the compliance was said, don't touch it, don't go near it, just we'll take care of it.
And you just brought this up.
Now you can judge for yourself on what you think about Dr. Fauci or not. You know what I'm saying? All I'm saying is that we shouldn't believe everything everybody tells
In
us.
2024, it may not be enough to sit on your stocks and hope they move. Well,
It definitely don't believe everything you hear. The struggle string king telling you that. For real. But I fear that if we don't do something, people like that will be able to dictate policy and they're not in elected positions. A lot of people that came before us warned us of these times to come. And I hope it's not coming true. But I just think back to the time of COVID, and it's so sad that a lot of people died alone. And that was the sad part about it, to me. So once it's the Struggle String King, your man Chris B, aka Buzz. Let me know what you thought about this Live. But I'm out of here. And once again, before I get out of here, I forgot. I got this live from the Benny Show. So, you know what I'm saying? There's plenty of live streams that you can check out. But I would recommend that you go check out the rest of this as it's going on as we speak at the Benny Show on YouTube. And subscribe to your boy, Chris Barber. I'm out.